So what if I told you the entire AI revolution, everything that's changing our world right now, was a complete and total accident? That it was all built on two technologies that the smartest people on the planet had basically written off as dead? Well, according to Stephen Witt's book, The Thinking Machine, the story we all think we know is basically a lie.
Yeah, let's really dig into this, because this one idea, it changes everything. The entire AI boom, we're talking ChatGPT, Midjourney, the whole shebang, it wasn't some grand master plan. Nope, it was a fluke. A collision of two ideas that the world had already tossed in the trash bin of failed tech.
Today, it feels like Nvidia's dominance was just inevitable, right? They are the one and only arms dealer in this massive AI gold rush. But this book pulls back the curtain and shows that for decades, they were betting the entire company on ideas that weren't just unpopular, they were seen as technological poison.
So what was this first failed idea? Well, it was a bet on a type of computing that was so out there, so universally hated, that it nearly tanked the company before it even got off the ground.
And that's a quote from Nvidia's CEO, Jensen Huang. He went all in on something called parallel computing. And the reason everyone hated it? It just seemed messy, chaotic, like trying to conduct an orchestra with thousands of musicians who've never played together. It was a total computational nightmare that nobody could figure out. A graveyard for startups.
This slide gives us the perfect analogy to understand it. Think of traditional computing as one giant, powerful truck. It can haul a huge load, but it's slow, tackling one big problem at a time. Parallel computing, the idea everyone hated, is like a massive fleet of motorcycles. Thousands of them, all solving tiny little pieces of the problem at the exact same time. It's chaotic, sure, but it is unbelievably fast.
And here's the absolute kicker. This revolutionary bet, this fleet of motorcycles, it wasn't for some grand vision of artificial intelligence. Not at all. It was to make video games like Quake look a little bit better. For over a decade, Wall Street hated it. The stock price went absolutely nowhere. For Jensen Huang, this wasn't about changing the world. It was about pure, desperate survival. In fact, this became his mantra inside the company. He would tell his staff this constantly. And it wasn't just to motivate them. It was the stone-cold reality. It was that relentless pressure that fueled their insane gamble. But, this unpopular hardware was only half of the accident. It needed to collide with an equally forgotten piece of software. So, if parallel computing was the engine that nobody wanted, what was the fuel? Well, it was another abandoned technology, one that most of the world's smartest researchers had basically dismissed as a joke, a toy.
We are talking, of course, about neural networks. Today, they're the absolute foundation of all modern AI. They're designed to learn from data, kind of like how our own brains work. But for a very, very long time, they were seen as deeply flawed.
Yeah, obsolete toys, that was the actual term for them, and here's why. To actually work, they needed two things that just didn't exist back then: insane amounts of data and absolutely ridiculous amounts of computing power. Without those, they were clumsy, inaccurate, basically just academic toys that were starved of cash and credibility.
This timeline really shows you the deep freeze they were in. It's called the AI winter. For 30 years, neural nets were just out in the cold. When an early form of AI crashed and burned in the 80s, it took neural nets down with it. Progress was so slow that pretty much everyone just gave up, which is exactly what made the breakthrough in 2012 so completely and utterly shocking. So how on earth did these two failures finally meet?
Okay, this is it. This is the moment the world changed. And it didn't happen in some billion-dollar lab with a team of geniuses. No, it happened when the unpopular hardware accidentally slammed right into the obsolete software.
It was a small group of researchers in Toronto, basically going against the grain of the entire academic world. They decided to dust off an old-school neural network and give it a try. They didn't have a supercomputer. They just bought two of Nvidia's off-the-shelf gaming cards. And the result wasn't just a little better, it was a straight-up revolution.
When Jensen Huang saw what they'd done, he didn't wait. He didn't form a committee. He bet the entire company again. One of his VPs said he sent an email on a Friday night, and by Monday morning, Nvidia had gone from a video game company to an AI company. Literally that fast. And this number is why. That collision, the unpopular hardware meeting the obsolete software, it unlocked a 1,000-fold speed-up in AI. Let me say that again. Not 10%, not double. 1,000 times faster over the next decade. I mean, to put that into perspective for you, For 50 years, all of computing followed something called Moore's Law, this idea that computer chips get twice as powerful every 2 years or so. But that law was dying. Progress was hitting a wall. Nvidia didn't just find a workaround. They created a whole new law, a supercharged, explosive growth curve nobody saw coming.
And this really gets to the core of the shift. Moore's Law was all about making computers smaller, cramming more and more transistors onto a chip. But this new law, let's call it Jensen's Law, it wasn't about size. It was about making computers think differently by creating a whole new architecture from the ground up.
So, through all this, Nvidia accidentally built the hardware for a thinking machine. But now that it's here, nobody, and I mean nobody, can agree on what it actually means for us.
It's wild. On one side, you have its creator, Jensen Huang, who kind of shrugs it all off, saying AI is no different than how a microwave works. But on the other side, you have hundreds of top industry leaders, including the very scientists who made that 2012 breakthrough, saying the risk is on par with nuclear war.
But look, if there is one crystal clear takeaway from this entire crazy story, it's this. The biggest world-changing breakthroughs don't come from following the crowd. They come from making huge bets on ideas that everyone else thinks are garbage, and then having the relentless conviction to see it through years and years of struggle.
The story of Nvidia is just incredible. It shows how our modern world was built on accident, on obsession, and on the sheer power of unpopular ideas. But it leaves us with one critical, massive question. Jensen Huang gave us the thinking machine. So what happens when it starts thinking for itself?